Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and happy Passover. So, I just want to go through kind of the timeline of the Passover story because I think it's actually really special, especially because we are entering the seventh and eighth days, the final days of Passover. So, as we know, the holiday of Passover we celebrate on the 15th of Nisan. And what happened historically on the 15th of Nisan was that the stroke of midnight on the 15th of Nisan was the death of the firstborn, the final plague, Makat Bechorot, where all of the firstborn of all Egyptians suddenly died in their sleep. The Jews, of course, were not affected by this because they had put lamb's blood on their doorposts and therefore were protected from this plague. So the Jewish people are not affected. The Egyptians, all the firstborn die, and Pharaoh is like, "This is enough. Leave." Between the 15th of Nisan and the 21st of Nisan are the first 7 days of the holiday that we celebrate. But at the time that they happened, we imagine, and I tried to do some research to find more information. It's like not. I'm sure I could find it somewhere, but I couldn't find it. In between those days, the Jewish people are maybe packing up all their things, maybe walking toward the Dead Sea. Maybe it's a really long path because the splitting of the Red Sea, which was the time that Pharaoh and his armies finally decided to change their mind. Pharaoh and his armies rush toward the Jews as they're leaving toward the Red Sea. And the Egyptians come upon the Jews, and that's when the Red Sea splits and the Jews walk across. So there are like 6 days in between. But the seventh day, the 21st of Nisan, is known as the really auspicious day where we celebrate Kriyat Yam Suf, the splitting of the Red Sea. And this is the parsha that we read on the parsha Beshalach, which is when Hannah and Philip's wedding was, which is an excellent parsha. And I explained this at the wedding, but I'll tell you more about that. The seventh day of Pesach is the day of the splitting of the Red Sea. The Shabbat that we read the Parsha telling the story of the splitting of the Red Sea is called Shabbat Shira. And it's called Shabbat Shira because it's the Sabbath of song. So what do we first think when we think the splitting of the Red Sea in songs? Well, we know that we had the song at the sea, Shirat Hayam. That's like written really interestingly in the Torah, has like an interesting sort of format. We know that in the Torah there is this song, and what does song mean? We think that the Jewish people all were tapped into this sort of high level of prophecy, and all suddenly knew this song and sang praise to God for the splitting of the Red Sea because it was an incredibly, incredibly miraculous thing, if you can imagine. Literally, the description is that it's like two walls on the opposite sides of the Jewish people, and they're literally walking across a dry floor. Incredibly miraculous. And there are people that say that even prophets from many, many, many years later, really, really auspicious prophets, would never reach the level of holiness that the people who just experienced Kriyat Yam Suf and Shirat Hayam, the splitting of the sea and the song at the sea, they would never even reach that level because it was such a special, big level. So the reason that the seventh day of Pesach is special to think about, so firstly, there's kind of all different days that are auspicious to daven on, to pray on, but the seventh day of Pesach, the day of the splitting of the Red Sea, is known as a really auspicious time to pray for your soulmate. And this Shabbat where we read the Parsha, Beshalach, the story of the splitting of the Red Sea, also is an auspicious time to pray for your soulmate, because there is a midrash that there is this woman who came to a rabbi and said, well, God made the world in 6 days, so what has he been doing since? And this rabbi tells this woman, well, he sits upon his throne in heaven and he makes matches. And the woman says, well, that's so easy. I can make matches. I can pair people together. And the rabbi responds, for you it may be easy, but for God to make a match is as difficult as splitting the Red Sea. So what do we learn from this? The splitting of the Red Sea was a huge, huge, huge deal, incredibly a prophetic, crazy moment of a true miracle. And it's on the same difficulty level as to match two people. It's interesting, and it's kind of a beautiful idea that it's so difficult to pair people together, and when they do find each other, it is also as special of a miracle as the splitting of the Red Sea. Another thing that's cool is that the Sabbath of Beshalach, the parsha we read about the splitting of the Red Sea, is called Shabbat Shira because of the song at the sea, but also it's also called Shabbat Shira with a different definition of the word Shira, singing, shir meaning song. There's a few different, there are 9 songs in the Torah, one of which is Shirat Hayam, one of which is in the Haftorah for Beshalach. It's the song that Dvorah, the prophet, the prophetess, sings. And there are other 9 total songs in the Jewish canon. And it is said that when Moshiach comes, when the Messiah comes, that will be when we hear the 10th song. And what we learn is that it's called Shabbat Shir not just because of Shirat Hayam, but also because of the really divine definition of the word song. Yes, a song is notes, a melody with rhythm and notes and words. That's definitely a song. But the Torah definition of a song is the moment when all seemingly unrelated events in the world suddenly mesh and make sense. It's sort of this like reckoning or recognition that suddenly all the pieces and parts make sense, which we can liken to an actual piece of music. Every accidental, every note, every word, every part, every notation of rhythm in a song makes it up. And we also know about like orchestral arrangements where there's different, totally like counterpoint, so many 8 lines of people doing different notes, different melodies, all matching together. And the moment when it all matches together is known as a shir, when everything in the world, all the things that are seemingly unrelated, mesh to form a coherent whole. And I love this. I talk about it all the time. You've definitely heard me talk about it multiple times. I really, really love this concept because I feel like I go through my life looking for these shirs, looking for the songs where all of these things unrelated mesh together. And I'm like, oh, wow. It's like the recognition that like all these things had to happen so that I could be here. And I feel very grateful that I've had a few moments like that in my life. And it's because I think I'm looking for them. So I encourage you all to enjoy the last few days of Pesach and think about these ideas, these sort of like recognition of when things suddenly mesh together and the world makes sense. So I'm wishing you a great Shabbat and a great final days of Pesach, and I will, God willing, see you all next week.